10 hours. That's how long Claire had to survive in a negative 40-degree freezer. 8 months pregnant with twins, locked inside by the one person who promised to protect her forever, her husband. But this isn't just a story about betrayal. It's about what happened when Marcus made one critical mistake. He underestimated his wife, and he forgot about his billionaire enemy, the man working late 3 buildings away. What Marcus planned as the perfect murder became the beginning of his own destruction. Because Claire didn't just survive that freezer, she delivered 2 babies alone and kept them alive in impossible conditions. If this story grips you, hit that like button. Drop a comment with your thoughts, and subscribe because stories like Claire's need to be heard. Let's begin. Tyler Grant had worked as a security guard at Bennett Pharmaceutical Research for 3 years. In that time, he had seen forgotten lunches, abandoned laptops, even a pair of designer heels left behind after a holiday party. But he had never seen this. A silver Tesla Model S sat alone in the executive parking lot at 2:15 in the morning. The hazard lights blinked weakly, like a dying heartbeat. Tyler pulled his patrol cart alongside it and stepped out into the February cold. The first thing he noticed was the phone. It sat in the cup holder, screen illuminated with notification after notification. 47 missed calls from someone named Paige. Text messages filled the lock screen. "Where are you, Claire? Answer me. I am calling the police." Tyler peered through the window. A designer purse lay open on the passenger seat, its contents spilled across the leather. Prenatal vitamins, a hospital bracelet from an ultrasound appointment, a folded paper with 2 tiny black and white images. Twins curled together in utero. Someone pregnant had left their car here 6 hours ago. Judging by the battery level of those hazard lights, Tyler radioed dispatch. "This is Grant at Bennett Pharma. I have got an abandoned vehicle. Pregnant woman's belongings inside. Need to check the building." He pulled up the security footage on his tablet, scrolling back through the evening. At 8:43 p.m., the Tesla had pulled into the lot. A woman emerged, heavily pregnant, her movements careful. A man met her at the entrance. They entered together through the main doors. Tyler fast-forwarded. 9 p.m., 9:30, 10, 11. At 11:17 p.m., the man exited alone. He glanced back at the building once, then walked to his own car and drove away. The woman never came out. Tyler felt ice in his stomach that had nothing to do with the February air. He scrolled back, zoomed in on the man's face. Marcus Hoffman, Executive Vice President of Research and Development. He had a corner office on the 4th floor and a reputation for working late. Tyler grabbed his radio again, his hand shaking. "Dispatch, I need police here now. I think we have got a missing person inside the building." 12 hours earlier, Claire Hoffman sat at her home office desk, staring at spreadsheets that made no sense. She was a financial analyst, or had been before her pregnancy forced her to step back from her demanding job at Goldman Sachs. Numbers were her language. She could spot irregularities in data the way a musician could hear a wrong note. And these numbers were screaming. Marcus's company accounts showed $3.2 million in unexplained transfers. The money had moved in small increments over 18 months, always just under the reporting threshold. It flowed to a network of shell companies, then disappeared into offshore accounts. Her husband was embezzling. Claire's hand went to her swollen belly, where the twins kicked and rolled. She was 32 weeks pregnant, due in 8 weeks. They had picked out names, Emma and Noah. They had painted the nursery, bought 2 cribs, 2 car seats, 2 of everything, and her husband was a thief. The front door opened. Marcus called out, "Honey, I am home." Claire quickly closed her laptop. Her heart hammered against her ribs. She needed time to think, to understand what she had found before confronting him. But Marcus appeared in the doorway of her office, loosening his tie. His eyes went immediately to her closed laptop, then to her face. He had always been able to read her too well. "What were you looking at?" he asked. His tone was light, but Claire saw his jaw tighten. "Nothing, just paying bills." The lie felt obvious, clumsy. Marcus walked around her desk, opened her laptop. The spreadsheet filled the screen. His expression did not change, but Claire felt the temperature in the room drop. Then he smiled. "Babe, you caught me." He pulled up a chair, sat beside her, took her hand. "I was planning a surprise. I have been investing in a startup, a biotech company that is developing a revolutionary drug delivery system. I did not want to tell you until I was sure it would pay off. Claire's analytical mind cataloged the tells, the way he squeezed her hand too tight, the forced casualness of his posture, the rehearsed quality of his explanation. Marcus, this is not investment money. This is embezzlement. The transfers, the shell companies. This is not legal. His smile never wavered. Come to the lab tonight. I will show you the prototype. You will understand when you see it. This is going to change our lives. Claire, make us rich. Give our babies everything. I do not need to see a prototype. I need to see legitimate documentation. Marcus, I need to understand why you are stealing from your own company. Something flickered behind his eyes. Calculation. Do not you trust me? After 6 years of marriage, the question hung between them, loaded with unspoken threat. Claire felt the baby's kick, as if sensing her distress. Of course I trust you, she heard herself say, but she did not. Not anymore. Then come tonight, 10 p.m. I will show you everything, explain everything. Bring no one. This is proprietary technology. We cannot risk industrial espionage. Claire nodded slowly. Every instinct screamed at her to refuse, to call someone, to run. But where would she run? Marcus controlled their finances, their home, their life. Okay, she whispered. I will come. Marcus kissed her forehead. That is my girl. Oh, and leave your phone in the car. The lab is a secure facility. The electromagnetic fields can damage devices. After he left for the office, Claire sat in the dark of her office for a long time. Then she opened her laptop and sent a single email to Paige Thornton, her best friend since college. If something happens to me, it is Marcus. Check his company accounts. 3.2 million missing. She hit send, then closed the laptop. She did not know she had just written her own salvation. The Bennett Pharmaceutical Research Building was a glass and steel monument to modern science. At 10 p.m., it was dark except for the security lights that cast long shadows across the empty lobby. Claire pulled into the executive parking lot, her hands trembling on the steering wheel. She had tried to call Paige 3 times on the drive over, but her friend had not answered. Probably at a work dinner. Paige was an investigative journalist who kept odd hours. She looked at her phone one last time. 40% battery. She hesitated, then left it in the cup holder as Marcus had instructed. If this was innocent, if there really was a prototype, she did not want to seem like she did not trust him, even though she did not. Claire locked the car, turned on the hazard lights out of habit. The parking lot lights flickered overhead. She felt very alone. Marcus met her at the entrance, his security badge already out. He smiled, kissed her cheek. Thank you for coming. I know you were worried, but you will see. This is amazing. He led her through the lobby, past the darkened reception desk, to the elevators. They descended instead of ascending. Below ground level, sub-basement 2, the elevator doors opened onto a concrete corridor lit by harsh fluorescent lights. The temperature dropped noticeably. The climate-controlled research vaults are down here, Marcus explained. We keep biological samples at specific temperatures. The prototype is in Vault 7. He led her down the corridor. Claire's footsteps echoed. She counted doors. Vault 1, Vault 2, Vault 3. Each had a small window, but the glass was frosted. Impossible to see through. Vault 7 had a large steel door with a mechanical lock. Marcus spun the dial. The lock clicked, and the door swung open. After you, he said. Claire stepped inside. The cold hit her immediately. A shocking breath-stealing cold that made her gasp. The walls were lined with metal shelves holding pharmaceutical supplies. There was no prototype, no revolutionary technology, just a freezer. She turned to face Marcus, but he was already backing out, pulling the door closed. Marcus, what are you doing? The door slammed shut. The lock clicked into place. Claire ran to the door, pounded on the steel. Marcus, let me out. This is not funny. His voice came through an intercom speaker in the ceiling, calm, almost bored. I am sorry it came to this. Claire, you were not supposed to find those accounts. Marcus, please, I am pregnant. Think about the babies. I am thinking about them. The life insurance policy I took out on you 6 months ago pays $5 million. That is a lot more useful to me than the two screaming infants and a wife who asked too many questions. Claire's knees buckled. She caught herself against the wall, the metal searing cold even through her coat. You planned this. You have been planning this. For 18 months, since you got pregnant, actually, I needed time to set everything up. The gambling debt story will be perfect. By the way, everyone will believe I was desperate. And when they find your body in a few days, frozen in a pharmaceutical vault, it will look like a tragic accident. You came to surprise me at work, got locked in by mistake. The security footage, Claire gasped. The cold was already seeping through her clothes, into her bones. We'll show you entering alone. I had the cameras on a loop. No one saw us come down here together. Paige knows. I sent her an email. A pause, then Marcus laughed. Oh, Claire, I have had access to your email for years. That message never sent. I set up filters months ago. But thank you for trying. The intercom clicked off. Claire screamed. She pounded on the door until her hands were numb, kicked it until her feet ached. The motion-activated lights stayed on, at least. As long as she kept moving, she could see. She looked around desperately. The vault was maybe 12 feet by 12 feet. Metal shelves lined 3 walls, filled with boxed pharmaceuticals. A digital display on the wall read, -40 degrees Fahrenheit, -40 degrees. Claire's teeth began to chatter. She pressed her hands to her belly, felt the twins moving inside her. Active. Alive. I am so sorry, she whispered to them. Mama is so sorry. She had 2 choices. Give up and die, or fight with everything she had. Claire Hoffman chose to fight. The human body begins shutting down at -40 degrees Fahrenheit. Blood vessels constrict, pulling warmth toward the vital organs. Fingers and toes go numb first, then hands and feet. Thinking becomes difficult. Movement becomes painful. Claire knew all of this from her research during pregnancy. She had read obsessively about every possible danger to her babies. She knew about hypothermia, knew the stages, knew the timeline. She had maybe 2 hours before unconsciousness, 4 before death. She forced herself to think like the analyst she was. What resources did she have? What were her options? The vault held pharmaceutical supplies. She began searching the shelves, her numb fingers struggling with the boxes. Most were vaccines, carefully temperature controlled. Useless to her. But on the bottom shelf, she found something, an emergency medical kit. Her hands shook as she opened it. Bandages, antiseptic, a scalpel, surgical clamps, emergency blanket. The blanket was thin, meant for shock patients. Not freezing temperatures, but it was something. Claire wrapped it around her shoulders, then kept searching. She found lab coats hanging on a hook by the door. 5 of them. She pulled them all on, layer after layer of thin cotton. Not warm, but better than nothing. The twins kicked. Hard. Urgent. I know, babies. I know. Claire's voice cracked. Mama is trying. She tried the door handle again, knowing it was futile. Locked solid, she examined the lock mechanism through the small window in the door. Industrial grade, designed to seal tight. But every sealed room had to have an emergency release. Building code required it. Fire safety mandated it. Claire searched the walls. Near the door, half hidden behind a shelf, she found it. A red lever with emergency release stenciled above it in faded letters. Hope exploded in her chest. She grabbed the lever with both hands and pulled. Nothing happened. She pulled harder, throwing her whole body weight into it. The lever moved slightly, then snapped off in her hands. Claire staggered backward, staring at the broken lever in disbelief. It had been disabled. Deliberately disabled. Marcus had planned even this. He had thought of everything. Claire slid down the wall, clutching the broken lever. The cold was relentless. Her toes had gone completely numb. Her fingers barely responded to her commands. And then the first contraction hit. Eti. Pain ripped through her abdomen, doubling her over. Claire gasped, counting through the contraction the way she had learned in birthing class. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. The pain peaked, held, then slowly released. Stress-induced labor. Her body, shutting down from hypothermia, was trying to save itself by expelling the pregnancy. At 32 weeks, The twins had a chance of survival in a NICU, in a negative 40-degree freezer. They had no chance at all. No, Claire said aloud. No, no, not yet. Please, not yet. But her body did not care what she wanted. Another contraction came, stronger than the first. She checked her watch. 6 minutes apart. She was going into active labor, and there was nothing she could do to stop it. Claire forced herself to stand, to move. Movement generated heat. She paced the small space, rubbing her arms, trying to keep blood flowing. Every step was agony. Her feet felt like blocks of ice. She found herself doing something she had not done since childhood. Praying. Please, she whispered. Please let someone find us. Please let my babies live. Please do not let Marcus win. The contractions continued. 5 minutes apart. 4 minutes. 3. Claire knew what was coming. She had read the books, taken the classes, prepared for a hospital delivery with epidurals and monitors and doctors. She had not prepared for this. She pulled the emergency medical kit toward her, laid out the supplies with shaking hands. Scalpel, clamps, antiseptic, clean towels from the lab coat shelf. It was not enough. It was nowhere near enough, but it was all she had. The contractions hit every 2 minutes now. Claire could feel the pressure building, the irresistible urge to push. Her body knew what to do, even if her mind was screaming in terror. She squatted against the wall, the emergency blanket beneath her. Labor at negative 40 degrees. It should have been impossible. But the human body was capable of impossible things when survival demanded it. Claire pushed. The pain was incredible, all-consuming and blinding, but she pushed again and again. Her daughter entered the world at 3:27 a.m., 6 pounds, 2 ounces, blue and silent. Claire's hands, numb and clumsy, caught the tiny body. The baby was not breathing. Her lips were blue, her skin mottled. No, Claire sobbed. No, no, no. Breathe, baby. Please breathe. She cleared the infant's mouth with her finger. Remembering the CPR class, placed her mouth over the tiny nose and mouth, gave gentle puffs of air. Once, twice. The baby gasped, coughed, released a weak, mewling cry. Claire collapsed against the wall, holding her daughter against her chest, sobbing with relief. You are okay, you are okay. Mama has got you. But there was no time to rest. Another contraction was building, even stronger than before. The second twin was coming. Claire's son was born 17 minutes later, smaller than his sister at 5 pounds 11 ounces. He did not cry, did not bawl, lay silent and blue in her hands. No, Claire whispered. No, you do not get to give up. You are a fighter. We are all fighters. She performed CPR again, her movements automatic despite her exhaustion. Breathe, compress. Breathe, compress. The baby coughed weakly, then let out a thin cry. Claire clutched both infants against her chest, wrapping the emergency blanket around all 3 of them. The babies were hypothermic, their skin cold to the touch. She had no way to warm them except her own body heat, and her body was failing. She felt the warmth spreading between her legs before she realized what was happening. Blood, too much blood, postpartum hemorrhaging, the complication she had feared most during her pregnancy. Claire's vision blurred. She used one of the lab coats to pack the wound, slowing the bleeding. It was not enough, but it bought her time. How much time? She did not know. The babies needed warmth. They needed a hospital, antibiotics, monitors, care. They needed everything she could not give them. Claire looked up at the security camera mounted in the corner of the vault. The red recording light blinked steadily. If she was going to die here, she was going to make sure everyone knew what Marcus had done, holding both babies in one arm. She used her free hand to drag herself closer to the camera. She looked directly into the lens and began to speak. My name is Claire Hoffman. Today is February 16th. The time is 3:54 a.m. My husband Marcus Hoffman locked me in this pharmaceutical freezer at approximately 10:15 p.m. last night. He told me he was going to kill me for insurance money. Her voice was weak, shaking, but she forced the words out. He disabled the emergency release. He planned this for 18 months. I delivered my twins alone in negative 40-degree temperature, Emma and Noah. If you are watching this, I am probably dead. But my husband is a murderer. Do not let him get away with it. Claire slumped against the wall, exhausted. Both babies were quiet now, frighteningly quiet. She pressed her fingers to their tiny chests, felt faint heartbeats. Still alive, barely. She began to sing to them, a lullaby her own mother had sung. Her voice cracked and faded, but she kept singing. If these were their last moments, she wanted them to hear their mother's voice, to know they were loved. The lights flickered. Claire's movements had slowed too much. Soon there would only be darkness. She closed her eyes, still singing, still holding her babies close. She did not hear the vault door open. Tyler Grant had called the police the moment he found Claire's car. Detective Frank Morrison arrived within 20 minutes, a veteran homicide detective with 30 years on the force and instincts that rarely failed him. When Tyler showed him the security footage, Morrison's jaw tightened. "That is Marcus Hoffman," Tyler said, VP of Research. "He left 6 hours ago. She never came out." Morrison was already on his radio. "I need all units to the Bennett Pharmaceutical Building. Possible kidnapping in progress. And get me a warrant for Marcus Hoffman's arrest." They found Claire in Vault 7. Tyler would never forget the sight. A woman slumped against the wall, skin blue-white, 2 tiny infants wrapped against her chest, all 3 completely still. "Oh God," Tyler breathed. But Morrison was already moving, dropping to his knees beside Claire. He pressed 2 fingers to her neck, searching for a pulse. "She is alive, love," he said. "Barely, but she is alive. Call an ambulance, now." Tyler ran for help while Morrison carefully examined the scene. The emergency blanket, the medical supplies, the evidence of recent childbirth, the broken emergency release lever, and the camera, recording everything. The ambulance arrived minutes later. Paramedics worked frantically, wrapping Claire and the babies in heated blankets, starting IVs, checking vital signs. "Core temperature, 82 degrees. One paramedic called out. "She is in severe hypothermia. The babies are at 88 degrees. "How long were they in here?" another asked. 6 hours, Morrison said grimly. "Maybe 7. That is impossible. No one survives 7 hours at -40 degrees. "Well, they did." Morrison looked at the camera. "And I am willing to bet that camera is going to tell us exactly why." Claire woke in the ICU 36 hours later. The first thing she saw was harsh fluorescent lights. The first thing she felt was pain. Everywhere. All at once. Her body screamed with every breath, every tiny movement. The second thing she saw was Paige Thornton, slumped in a chair beside her bed. Asleep. Her best friend's face was pale, exhausted, tear-stained. How long had she been sitting there, Paige? Claire croaked. Her throat was raw, her voice barely audible, like sandpaper against concrete. Paige's eyes flew open. "Claire, oh my God! Claire!" She grabbed the call button and pressed it repeatedly with shaking hands. "You are awake. You are awake. Thank God, you are awake." A doctor appeared within seconds, a woman in her 40s with kind eyes and competent hands. She moved with the calm efficiency of someone who had seen everything. "Mrs. Hoffman, I am Dr. Rebecca Walsh. You are in the ICU at County General. Do you know where you are? Do you know what day it is?" Claire's mind felt foggy, slow. She tried to piece together fragments. The freezer, the cold, Marcus's voice, the babies. "My babies," Claire whispered. The words came out desperate, terrified. "Where are my babies? Are they alive? Please tell me they are alive. In the NICU, they are critical but stable. We will take you to see them soon. I promise, but first I need to examine you. Can you tell me what you remember?" Everything. Claire remembered everything. The betrayal, the cold, the impossible choice of which baby to keep warm, the feel of their tiny bodies against her chest, the certainty that they were all going to die. "All of it," Claire whispered. "I remember all of it." Dr. Walsh conducted a thorough examination while explaining Claire's condition in careful, measured terms. Severe hypothermia. Her core body temperature had dropped to 82 degrees Fahrenheit. Another hour and her organs would have begun shutting down permanently. Frostbite requiring the amputation of 3 toes on her left foot. They had tried to save them, had warmed her slowly, carefully, but the tissue damage was too severe. The toes were already necrotic when she arrived. Nerve damage in both hands. She might regain some sensation with physical therapy, or she might not. Too early to tell. Postpartum complications. Hemorrhaging that had required emergency surgery and 3 blood transfusions. You should not have survived, Dr. Walsh said quietly, sitting on the edge of Claire's bed. The medical literature has no record of anyone surviving 7 hours at negative 40 degrees, especially not someone who delivered twins during that time. What you did, Mrs. Hoffman, defies every understanding we have of human physiology. You are a medical miracle. My babies, Claire said again. It was all she could think about. Please, are they okay? Really okay? Dr. Walsh's expression softened. Emma weighs 3 pounds, 2 ounces. Noah weighs 2 pounds, 14 ounces. Both are on ventilators, but they are breathing on their own for short periods. Their vitals are stabilizing. They are in isolates, being carefully monitored around the clock. Can they hear me if I talk to them? Will they know it is me? Yes, absolutely yes. Babies know their mother's voice. It is one of the first things they recognize. Claire's eyes filled with tears. They are fighters. They take after their mother, do they not? They absolutely do, Dr. Walsh said, and there was something like awe in her voice. Paige was crying now, holding Claire's bandaged hand carefully to avoid the IV lines and damaged nerves. I got your email when I got home from my work dinner around 11:30. I called the police immediately. Claire, I called Detective Morrison and told him everything you wrote. If I had just checked my phone earlier, if I had just answered when you called, I could have stopped this before it happened. You saved us, Claire said. Her voice was stronger now, more certain. You got help. You believed me. Tyler Grant saved you, Paige said, wiping her eyes. The security guard, he found your car at 2 in the morning, hazard lights still blinking. He reviewed the security footage, saw Marcus leave you in that building, and called it in. He refused to leave until they found you. Tyler Grant, Claire repeated, committing the name to memory. A stranger who had noticed, who had cared enough to investigate, who had saved 3 lives by paying attention. And Detective Morrison, Paige continued, he broke protocol to get into that vault. He did not wait for warrants or permissions. He just acted. You were unconscious when they found you, barely breathing. Both babies were blue. They said you had minutes left. Maybe less. Minutes. Claire had come within minutes of dying with her babies. If Tyler had not noticed the car, if Morrison had waited for proper authorization, if any single thing had gone differently. Marcus, Claire asked. Her voice hardened on his name. Arrested, Detective Morrison said from the doorway. He was a tall man with graying hair and sharp, intelligent eyes, the kind of eyes that missed nothing. We got him at his apartment at 4 a.m., pounded on the door until he answered. Morrison walked into the room, pulled up a chair. He acted shocked when we told him you were in the hospital, claimed he did not know you were at the building, said you must have gone there on your own, gotten locked in by accident. He actually cried. Mrs. Hoffman, convincing tears. If I had not already seen the security footage, I might have believed him. But you have the footage, Claire said. You have proof. We have everything. The security footage showing him leading you into that vault and leaving alone. We have your testimony recorded on the vault's internal camera. We have the vault itself, with clear evidence that the emergency release was deliberately disabled, not broken. We have the modified mechanism that would have required specialized tools and advanced planning. He is going to prison, Paige said fiercely. For the rest of his life, they are charging him with 3 counts of attempted murder, fraud, embezzlement. He is never getting out. Claire wanted to believe it, wanted to feel safe, but she had been married to Marcus for 6 years. She knew how smart he was, how manipulative, how he could make people doubt their own memories, their own reality. He will have lawyers, Claire said quietly. Good lawyers. His mother Judith is a corporate attorney. She has connections, money. She will fight for him. Let her fight, Morrison said. We have an airtight case. But Claire saw something flicker in his eyes. Doubt, concern, she could not tell. I want to see my babies, she said. Right now, please. They wheeled her to the NICU 20 minutes later. Claire's body protested every movement, but she did not care. Nothing mattered except seeing Emma and Noah. The NICU was a maze of machines and monitors, beeping and humming with artificial life. Nurses moved between isolates with practiced efficiency. And there, side by side, were two tiny isolates containing two impossibly small babies. Emma had dark hair, a shock of it already visible. Noah was blonde, his hair so pale it was almost white. They looked nothing alike. Fraternal twins, two completely different individuals who had survived the impossible together. Claire reached through the isolate openings with her bandaged hands, touched their tiny fingers. They were warm, alive. Their chests rose and fell with steady breaths. "You did it," she whispered to them. "We did it. We surveyed." Emma's eyes fluttered open for just a moment, unfocused but aware. Noah made a small sound, not quite a cry, more like a question. "Mama is here," Claire said in her voice breaking. "Mama is here and Mama is never leaving you. Never." For the first time in 7 hours, Claire felt something like hope. Her babies were alive. Marcus was arrested. Justice would prevail. She had no idea that hope was about to be shattered. 48 hours passed in a blur of doctors and nurses and physical therapy. Claire learned to walk again without any missing wounds. The balance all wrong, her gait unsteady. She practiced gripping things with her damaged hands, trying to make her fingers remember how to work. And she visited Emma and Noah every 2 hours, talking to them, touching them, being present. Then Detective Morrison arrived with news that made Claire's blood turn to ice. "Marcus posted bail," Morrison said without preamble. $2 million. His mother wrote the check this morning. He walked out of jail an hour ago. Claire felt the room spin. How is that possible? He tried to murder 3 people. His lawyer argued he is not a flight risk. No prior criminal record, strong community ties, stable employment. The judge set bail, and his mother paid it. "So he is just free," Paige demanded, her voice rising. "He is out there, walking around, while Claire is in a hospital bed missing toes. Pending trial, yes. He has an ankle monitor. He is not allowed within 500 feet of this hospital or Claire's home, but legally he is free until the trial." Claire stared at the ceiling, trying to process this. Marcus was out there, free, probably planning his defense, coordinating with his lawyers, preparing to destroy her credibility. "There is more," Morrison said, and his tone made Claire's stomach drop. "His attorney filed an emergency motion this morning for temporary custody of the twins." The words did not make sense at first. Claire's brain refused to process them. "What?" she whispered. Morrison pulled out legal documents, handed them to Paige. "Marcus is claiming that Claire has a history of mental health issues, that the pregnancy hormones exacerbated underlying instability, that she locked herself in the vault during a psychotic episode and is now blaming him." "That is insane," Paige said, reading through the documents. "Everyone knows he did it. The security footage, her testimony, the evidence. His lawyers are arguing the footage could have been edited, that Claire went into the vault willingly as part of a delusional episode, that everything she said on camera was the result of hypothermia-induced hallucinations, that the emergency release was already broken, not deliberately disabled." Claire felt like she was back in the freezer, the cold seeping into her bones. This could not be happening. But the medical evidence, the twins born in those conditions, that cannot be explained away. "They are not explaining it away," Morrison said grimly. "They are reframing it. You did all of this to yourself during a psychotic break. You endangered your own children. Marcus is the victim here, a loving husband whose wife has made false accusations, and now he wants custody to protect his children from their unstable mother." It was gaslighting on a legal scale. Marcus was doing to the entire justice system what he had done to Claire for 6 years, making everyone doubt reality itself, making her look crazy while he played the wounded, concerned husband. "When is the custody hearing?" Claire asked, her voice hollow. "Friday, 3 days from now. And until then?" Morrison hesitated. The judge granted Marcus supervised visitation rights, 2 hours a day, supervised by a social worker. Here at the hospital, Claire could not breathe, could not think. The room was spinning, the walls closing in. "He cannot see them," she gasped. He tried to kill them. He locked me in a freezer to murder them. He cannot see my babies. But the legal system did not care what Claire wanted. Marcus had rights. Innocent until proven guilty. Due process. Parental rights that superseded criminal charges until conviction. All the legal protections meant to ensure justice were being weaponized against her. Dr. Walsh appeared, saw Claire's distress. Everyone out, now. She is having a panic attack. Claire was indeed hyperventilating, unable to catch her breath. The monitor screamed as her heart rate spiked. Dr. Walsh administered medication, talked her through breathing exercises. But nothing helped, because the nightmare was not over. It was just beginning. Paige found Claire in the NICU at 2 a.m., standing between the isolates with her hands on both babies. She had not slept, had refused medication, had just stood there for hours. I cannot protect them, Claire whispered when Paige approached. I survived the freezer. I delivered them. I kept them alive through 7 hours of hell, and now the law is going to give them to the man who tried to murder them. That is not going to happen, Paige said, but her voice lacked conviction, and they both knew it. Claire looked at her friend, this brilliant investigative journalist who had always fought for the truth. Can you find something, anything? There has to be more. Marcus did not just wake up one day and decide to kill his wife. There has to be a history, a pattern, something we can use. I am already looking, Paige promised. I have been digging into his past since the night we found you. His college years, his previous relationships, his business dealings. There is something there. Claire, I can feel it. I just have not found it yet. Find it fast, Claire said, because in 3 days, a judge is going to decide if Marcus gets access to my babies. And I cannot let that happen. I cannot. Claire turned back to Emma and Noah. They slept peacefully, unaware of the legal battle being waged over their tiny bodies, unaware that their father, who had tried to murder them before they were born, might get the right to hold them. She had fought so hard to keep them alive, and now she might lose them anyway. It was, in many ways, worse than the freezer. At least in the freezer, the enemy was clear, cold, hypothermia, death. Now the enemy was the law itself, twisted and weaponized by a man who knew exactly how to manipulate every system. And Claire had no idea how to fight it. Marcus Hoffman was arraigned 48 hours after Claire's rescue. The charges were severe: 3 counts of attempted murder, kidnapping, fraud, embezzlement. The prosecutor called it one of the most heinous domestic violence cases in the state's history. The judge set bail at $2 million. Marcus's mother, Judith, a high-powered corporate attorney, wrote the check without hesitation. Marcus walked out to jail 6 hours later, free pending trial. Claire watched the news coverage from her hospital bed, her blood turning to ice. They let him out, she whispered. They let him out. Paige was on the phone immediately, calling Detective Morrison. How is this possible? He tried to kill her. Bail is constitutional, Morrison said grimly. His lawyer argued he is not a flight risk. No prior record, community ties. The judge bought it, but worse was coming. 3 days after his release, Marcus's attorney filed an emergency motion for temporary custody of the twins. Claire stared at the legal documents in disbelief. He is asking for custody of the babies he tried to murder. Marcus's attorney had crafted a narrative that was as brilliant as it was horrifying. Claire had a history of anxiety, had been prescribed medication for it. The pregnancy hormones had made her unstable, paranoid. She had locked herself in the vault during a delusional episode, then blamed her loving husband. The freezer incident was not attempted murder. It was a mental health crisis. They had expert witnesses ready to testify. A psychiatrist who would say Claire exhibited signs of postpartum psychosis, even before the birth. A colleague who would say she had seemed off in the weeks before the incident. This is insane, Paige said. Everyone knows he did it. The security footage, her testimony on camera, the disabled emergency release. His lawyers are arguing that footage was edited, Morrison explained. That Claire went into the vault willingly to prove a point about safety protocols. That the emergency release was broken, not disabled. That everything she said on camera was the result of hypothermia-induced hallucinations. But the medical evidence, Dr. Walsh protested. The injuries, the twins born in those conditions, That cannot be explained away. They are not explaining it away. They are reframing it. Claire did all of this to herself during a psychotic break. Marcus is the victim here, a loving husband whose wife made false accusations. It was gaslighting on a legal scale. Marcus was doing to the entire justice system what he had done to Claire for 6 years, making everyone doubt reality itself. The custody hearing was scheduled for the following week. The judge, in the interest of parental rights, granted Marcus supervised visitation pending the hearing. Claire had a panic attack when they told her, hyperventilating, unable to breathe, the monitor screaming as her heart rate spiked. "He cannot see them," she gasped. "He tried to kill them. He cannot see my babies." But the legal system did not care what Claire wanted. Marcus had rights, innocent until proven guilty, due process. All the legal protections meant to ensure justice were being weaponized against her. Paige found Claire in the NICU at 2 a.m., standing between the isolates, her hands on both babies. "I cannot protect them," Claire whispered. "I survived the freezer. I delivered them. I kept them alive. And now the law is going to give them to the man who tried to murder them." "That is not going to happen," Paige said, but her voice lacked conviction. Claire looked at her friend, this brilliant investigative journalist who had always fought for the truth. "Can you find something, anything? There has to be more." Marcus did not just wake up one day and decide to kill his wife. There has to be a history, a pattern, something. "I am already looking," Paige promised. "I have been digging into his past since the night we found you. There is something there. Claire, I can feel it. I just have not found it yet." Claire turned back to her babies. Emma stirred, made a small sound. Noah slept peacefully, his tiny chest rising and falling. She had fought so hard to keep them alive, and now she might lose them anyway. It was, in many ways, worse than the freezer. At least in the freezer. The enemy was clear. Cold, hypothermia, death. Now the enemy was the law itself, and Claire had no idea how to fight it. Ethan Caldwell appeared at the hospital on a Tuesday afternoon, unannounced. Claire was in physical therapy, learning to walk again without her missing toes. When the nurse told her she had a visitor, she assumed it was Paige or Detective Morrison. She was not expecting the tall, dark-haired man in the expensive suit. "Mrs. Hoffman," he said, "my name is Ethan Caldwell. We have not met, but we have a mutual enemy." Claire stared at him. "I do not know you." "No, but I know Marcus. 8 years ago, he was my business partner. We developed a biotech patent together, a revolutionary drug delivery system. Marcus stole the patent, forged my signature on transfer documents, and destroyed my company. I spent 3 years in court trying to prove the fraud. By the time I won, Marcus had sold the technology and hidden the money." Claire's analytical mind processed this information. "You are the reason Marcus had so much debt. You sued him. I won eventually, but it cost me everything. My company, my reputation, years of my life. I rebuilt, started over in tech instead of biotech. Did well." He smiled slightly. "Very well, actually. Forbes estimates my net worth at 1.4 billion. Why are you telling me this?" "Because Marcus Hoffman destroys people. It is what he does. He destroys, then moves on to the next victim. I have been waiting 8 years for him to make a mistake, to slip up, to give me a chance to take him down properly. And then he locked his pregnant wife in a freezer." Ethan pulled out a chair, sat down. His eyes were intense. "I know what he is. Claire, Michelle, I know how he manipulates, how he lies, how he makes everyone doubt reality. And I have the resources to fight him. Money, lawyers, private investigators, everything you need to win this custody battle and put him in prison where he belongs." "Why would you help me?" Claire asked. "What do you want in return?" "Justice, that is all. Marcus took 3 years of my life. He almost took yours and your children's lives. I want to make sure he never hurts anyone again." Claire studied his face, looking for the angle, the manipulation, but she only saw sincerity and something else, determination. "What do you need from me?" she asked. "Your permission to help, to hire lawyers, to fund the investigation, to do whatever it takes to protect you and Emma and Noah." Claire thought about the custody hearing in 5 days, about Marcus's expensive legal team, about her own complete lack of resources. Marcus controlled their bank accounts, their house, everything. She had nothing except the truth, and apparently the truth was not enough. "Okay," she said. "Help me, please." Ethan nodded. "I already have investigators looking into Marcus's past. If there is anything there, we will find it. And I suspect there is a lot there." He was right. Within 48 hours, Ethan's team uncovered what Paige had been searching for. Vanessa Reed, Marcus's business partner, and, as it turned out, his mistress. They had been having an affair for 3 years, almost since the moment Marcus and Claire married. The investigators found hotel receipts, text messages, emails, but more importantly, they found financial records. Vanessa and Marcus had been embezzling together. The $3.2 million Claire had found was just the beginning. Over 3 years, they had stolen nearly $8 million from Bennett Pharmaceutical. The gambling debts were fake, Ethan explained, spreading documents across Claire's hospital room table. A cover story. Marcus and Vanessa were planning to run away together, start over with the money. But then you got pregnant, and I became inconvenient, Claire said quietly. Worse than inconvenient. Expensive. Divorce would have meant splitting assets, child support. Much cheaper to become a widower with a tragic story. Paige had been doing her own digging. She appeared at the hospital with her laptop, her face grim. "I found her, Vanessa Reed, but more importantly, I found someone else, a woman named Miranda Stevens. She dated Marcus 9 years ago, before you met him." Paige turned the laptop to show an old police report. Incomplete. Never filed. Miranda Stevens had called the police claiming her boyfriend Marcus Hoffman had locked her in a basement apartment for 3 days when she tried to break up with him. She had recanted the next day, said it was a misunderstanding. "He has done this before," Claire breathed. "And I found Miranda," Paige said one. "She lives in Portland now, works as a teacher, never married. I think she has been carrying this guilt for 9 years. Can we get her to testify?" Ethan asked. "I can try," Paige said. But Claire, there is something else. The emergency release in that vault. It was not just disabled. It was deliberately modified. Someone with technical knowledge would have had to do it. She pulled up schematics on her laptop. "I got these from the building contractor. That release should be impossible to disable without specialized tools and knowledge. Someone had to plan this months in advance." "Vanessa is a mechanical engineer," Ethan said slowly. "That is her background before she moved into pharmaceutical management." The pieces fell into place. Marcus and Vanessa, planning the perfect murder together. Months of preparation. Every detail calculated. "We need Vanessa to turn," Detective Morrison said. He had arrived during the discussion, had been listening quietly. "If we can get her to flip, to testify against Marcus, we have him." "She will never flip," Claire said. "She loves him." "Everyone has a price," Ethan said. "Or everyone has a weakness. We just need to find hers." Paige smiled slowly. "I think I know what it is. According to my research, Vanessa has a daughter, 7 years old, lives with her ex-husband. Vanessa barely gets to see her because of her work schedule. Offer her immunity," Morrison said. "Reduce sentence, community service instead of prison time. She testifies. She gets to stay in her daughter's life." It was manipulation. It was playing dirty. It was exactly what Marcus would do. But Claire did not care. Her baby's lives were at stake. "Do it," she said. Vanessa Reed sat in the interrogation room, her lawyer beside her, her face pale. Detective Morrison laid out the evidence methodically. Financial records, security footage of Vanessa entering the pharmaceutical building the day before the incident, engineering schematics showing the modified emergency release, phone records placing her and Marcus together the night Claire was locked in the freezer. "You helped him," Morrison said. "You modified the emergency release. You created the cover story about gambling debts. You were in this together from the beginning." Vanessa's lawyer started to object, but Vanessa held up her hand. "I want to talk to Claire," she said. "My client is not making any statements at this time." Her lawyer began. "I want to talk to Claire Hoffman." Vanessa repeated, "Alone." It was highly irregular. Morrison looked at Claire, who had been watching through the one-way glass. Claire nodded. They brought her into the room. Vanessa looked at her. Really looked at her. At the bandaged hands. The way Claire favored one foot. The exhaustion and trauma written on her face. "You delivered babies in that freezer," Vanessa said quietly. "That was not part of the plan. Marcus said you would just go to sleep, that it would be painless." "There is no painless way to freeze to death," Claire said. "And I was 8 months pregnant. My body went into stress-induced labor." Vanessa looked away. "I have a daughter. She is 7. Her name is Sophie. I barely see her because my ex got custody. I work too much. He said, I am not stable enough." "Is that why you needed the money?" Claire asked. "For a custody battle. Marcus promised we would have enough to hire the best lawyers, that I would get Sophie back, that we would be a family." Claire felt something unexpected. Not pity, exactly, but understanding. "He manipulates. That is what he does. He finds what you want most and promises to give it to you. Then he uses that promise to make you do terrible things." Vanessa looked at her. "What did he promise you? Love, partnership, a family, the same things everyone wants." Claire leaned forward. "But Marcus does not love anyone except himself. He was going to kill me and my babies for insurance money. What do you think he would have done to you once he had what he wanted?" Vanessa's eyes widened. "He would not. We were going to run away together." "Were you?" Claire asked. "Or were you going to take the fall for everything, the embezzlement, the murder attempt? You modified the emergency release. Your fingerprints are all over this. Marcus has been setting you up from the beginning." She could see Vanessa processing this, see the moment doubt crept in. "I have a daughter," Vanessa whispered. "If I go to prison, I will never see Sophie again." "Then testify," Claire said. "Tell the truth. The prosecutor will offer you immunity, reduced charges. You will do community service, but you will stay with your daughter. Or you can protect Marcus and spend the next 20 years in prison while he tells everyone you acted alone." Vanessa looked at her lawyer, then at Morrison, then back at Claire. "If I testify, he will say I am lying. He will destroy me." "He is going to destroy you anyway," Claire said quietly. "The only question is whether you let him take your daughter too." Vanessa started crying. Not delicate tears, but harsh, ugly sobs. "I did not know about the babies. He said you were not pregnant anymore. I thought it was just you." "Does that make it better?" "No." Vanessa wiped her eyes. "No, it makes it worse. I am so sorry. I am so sorry." "Then prove it," Claire said. "Testify. Tell the truth. Help me make sure he never does this to anyone else." Vanessa looked at her lawyer. "What is the deal? Testify fully and truthfully." Morrison said, "Provide all evidence you have. In exchange, immunity from murder charges, reduced fraud charges, probation and community service instead of prison time." "I want it in writing," Vanessa's lawyer said. "You will have it in an hour." Vanessa nodded slowly. "Okay, I will testify. I will tell you everything." The custody hearing was scheduled for Friday, the criminal trial for 6 weeks later. But with Vanessa's testimony, both outcomes were suddenly very different. Claire sat in her hospital room, holding Emma while Noah slept in her lap. Both babies had been released from the NICU 2 days earlier, small but stable. Paige appeared in the doorway. "I got Miranda to agree to testify. She is flying in from Portland tomorrow." "And Vanessa," Claire asked, "gave a full statement, detailed everything, the affair, the embezzlement, the planning. She broke down twice during the interview." "Good," Claire said without sympathy. Vanessa might have been manipulated, but she had still helped Marcus try to murder 3 people. Remorse did not erase that. Ethan arrived with his legal team. "We file for full custody tomorrow morning, with Vanessa's testimony and Miranda's. Marcus's lawyer will advise him to take a plea deal." "He will not plead," Claire said. "That would mean admitting he was wrong. Marcus never admits he is wrong." "Then we will destroy him in court," Ethan said simply. Claire looked at this man who had shown up at her worst moment and offered help, who asked for nothing in return except justice, who understood what Marcus was because he had survived Marcus too. "Why are you really doing this?" she asked. "The truth?" Ethan sat down, looked at Emma and Noah. 8 years ago, Marcus destroyed my life. I was angry, bitter. I rebuilt my company, made my fortune, but I lost something. I lost my faith that good people could win, that justice existed. Then I heard about what happened to you, and I saw someone who refused to give up, who delivered babies in a freezer and kept them alive through sheer will. You reminded me that sometimes the good guys do win. I am doing this because I want to remember that. It was honest, raw, human. Thank you, Claire said quietly. Do not thank me yet. Thank me when Marcus is in prison where he belongs. The trial lasted 3 days. The prosecution built their case methodically. Security footage, medical evidence, the modified emergency release, financial records showing embezzlement in the insurance policy. Vanessa Reed took the stand and told everything. How she and Marcus had planned it for 6 months. How she had modified the emergency release, making it look functional but ensuring it would break if used. How Marcus had researched hypothermia survival times to make sure Claire would not last the night. He called it the perfect crime, Vanessa testified, her voice shaking. He said by the time they found her body, it would look like an accident, a tragic malfunction. He would be the grieving widower, and we would be together. Did you know Mrs. Hoffman was pregnant? The prosecutor asked. Yes, but Marcus said the pregnancy was not viable, that she had already lost the babies. I believed him. Vanessa looked at Claire in the gallery. I am so sorry. I should have known he was lying. He lies about everything. Miranda Stevens testified next. She described her relationship with Marcus 9 years earlier, how he became controlling, isolating her from friends, how when she tried to break up with him, he locked her in her basement apartment for 3 days. Why did not you press charges? The prosecutor asked. I was scared, Miranda said simply, and he convinced me I was overreacting, that it was my fault for trying to leave him, that I was lucky he loved me enough to fight for me. I believed him because that is what he does. He makes you doubt your own reality. Claire testified last. She told everything, finding the financial irregularities, the setup, the freezer, delivering Emma and Noah alone, fighting to keep them alive. Mrs. Hoffman, the prosecutor said gently, can you describe what you were thinking during those hours in the freezer? Claire looked at the jury, 12 faces watching her. I was thinking about my babies, that they deserved to live, that I refused to let Marcus win, that if I was going to die, I was going to make sure everyone knew he murdered me. So I recorded my testimony on the security camera. I was not going to let him get away with it. You thought you were going to die. Yes, I knew hypothermia would kill me within hours. I knew the babies would not survive the cold, but I fought anyway, because giving up meant Marcus won, and I refused to let him win. The defense tried to argue mental illness, delusional episodes, self-inflicted injuries. But Vanessa's testimony destroyed their narrative. Miranda's testimony showed pattern and premeditation. The physical evidence was overwhelming. Marcus never took the stand. His lawyer advised against it. The jury deliberated for 5 hours. Guilty on all counts. 3 counts of attempted murder, fraud, embezzlement, conspiracy. The judge sentenced him to 45 years without possibility of parole. Claire watched as they led Marcus away in handcuffs. He looked at her once, not with hatred or anger, with nothing, empty eyes, a mask that had finally slipped to reveal the void beneath. He had never loved her, had never felt anything for her except what she could provide. Money, status, convenience. Claire felt nothing watching him disappear. Not satisfaction, not closure, just relief that the nightmare was finally over. But the custody hearing was brief. With Marcus convicted and facing decades in prison, he had no legal standing to claim parental rights. Claire was granted full custody. Vanessa received probation and community service. Her legal troubles over. 6 months later, Claire stood at a podium facing an audience of 200 domestic violence survivors. She wore a navy blue dress. Her hair was longer now, her face healthy. Emma and Noah were with Paige, who had become their unofficial godmother. My name is Claire Hoffman, she began. 6 months ago, my husband locked me in a pharmaceutical freezer at -40 degrees. He planned to murder me and our unborn twins for insurance money. I delivered both babies alone in that freezer. We survived when by all medical logic we should have died. She paused, looking at the faces in the audience. Women who had survived their own nightmares. People asked me how I had the courage to fight, but it was not courage. It was necessity. I had no choice except to fight or die, and I chose to fight. Claire told her story, not just the freezer, but everything before it, the isolation, the control, the slow erosion of her identity, the way Marcus had built a cage one bar at a time until she could not see the prison she lived in. Abusers do not use violence first, she said. They use love. They make you feel special, chosen, lucky. Then slowly, they take pieces of you, your friends, your family, your money, your sense of reality. By the time you realize you are trapped, you do not remember how to be free. She talked about Ethan, about how his help reminded her that not all men were Marcus, about Paige's friendship that never wavered, about Detective Morrison and Dr. Walsh and Tyler Grant, the security guard who noticed something wrong and refused to ignore it. I did not save myself alone, Claire said. I fought, yes, but I survived because people helped, because someone noticed, because people believed me, because I had resources and support. She looked directly at the audience. If you are in an abusive relationship, know this. It is not your fault. The cage was built one bar at a time. You were not supposed to see it. That is what abusers do. But you can leave. It is terrifying. It is dangerous, but the most dangerous time for a domestic violence victim is when they leave. But you can do it with help, with resources, with people who believe you. Claire finished her speech to thunderous applause. Women lined up afterward to tell their stories, to thank her, to ask for advice. One woman, maybe 60 years old, whispered, I have been married 40 years. He has never hit me, but I feel trapped. Then you probably are, Claire said gently. Abuse is not just physical. It is control. It is manipulation. It is making you feel like you cannot survive without them. Is it too late for me? No, it is never too late to choose freedom. 1 year after the freezer, Claire's life looked completely different. She lived in a townhouse Ethan had helped her buy. Though she insisted on paying him back through monthly payments from her new job, she was a financial analyst again, working remotely for a consulting firm. Her hours were flexible. Her boss was understanding. Emma and Noah were 16 months old, walking and babbling and getting into everything. They had no memory of their traumatic birth. For that, Claire was grateful every day. Paige lived 10 minutes away and was over constantly. Dr. Walsh had become a friend. Detective Morrison checked in regularly. And Ethan? Ethan had become something Claire could not quite define. He visited weekly, always bringing something for the twins, toys, books, his presence. He never pushed, never asked for anything, just showed up. On a Tuesday evening, after Emma and Noah were asleep, Claire and Ethan sat on her back porch with coffee. You do not have to keep checking on us, Claire said. We are okay now. I know you are, Ethan said. I am not here because I think you need me. I am here because I want to be. Claire studied his face. Why? Because you remind me that good things can happen after bad things, that survival is possible, that people can heal. He smiled slightly. And because I enjoy your company. Ethan, I am not looking for a relationship. I might never be ready for that. I know. I am not asking for one. Then what are you asking for? Permission to keep showing up, to be your friend, to be in Emma and Noah's lives if you will let me. Nothing more. Not unless you want more. Claire felt something crack open in her chest. The armor she had built, the walls that kept everyone at a distance. They did not shatter, but they cracked. Just a little. I check the locks 3 times every night, she admitted. I still have nightmares about the cold. I panic if the twins are quiet for too long. I am not healed. Ethan, I might never be fully healed. No one is asking you to be healed, just to keep healing. That could take years. Then I will wait years. Claire looked at him, at this man who had every reason to be bitter and cynical, but chose kindness instead, who understood trauma because he had survived it too. She was not ready to love again, did not know if she ever would be. But maybe she did not have to be. Maybe it was enough to let someone stand beside her while she figured out who she was after everything Marcus had taken. Okay, she whispered. You can keep showing up. Thank you. They sat in comfortable silence, watching stars appear in the darkening sky. Inside, Emma made a small sound through the baby monitor. Claire started to stand, but the sound stopped, both twins sleeping peacefully. I am going to the prison next week, Claire said suddenly, to testify at Marcus's parole eligibility hearing. Not that he will ever get parole with a 45-year sentence, but I want to be there to make sure. Bo, do you want company? No, I need to do this alone. She paused. But I would like you to be waiting when I come back. I will be here. Claire visited Ethan in the rearview mirror as she drove to the prison the following week. He stood in her driveway with Paige, both of them watching Emma and Noah. A support system, a safety net, people who showed up. The prison was gray and cold. Marcus looked older, thinner. Prison did not suit him. They brought him into the hearing room. His eyes found hers, and for a moment, Claire saw something flicker. Anger, regret, she could not tell, did not care. The parole board asked Claire to speak. Marcus Hoffman locked me in a freezer when I was 8 months pregnant with twins, she began. He planned to murder me and our unborn children for insurance money. I delivered Emma and Noah alone at negative 40 degrees. We survived when we should have died. She looked directly at Marcus. He has shown no remorse, has never apologized, has never taken responsibility. He is a danger to society and should never be released. The parole board denied his application unanimously. As they led Marcus away, Claire felt something she had not expected. Not satisfaction, not hatred, just closure. Marcus was no longer the center of her story. He was a villain in Chapter 3. She was writing Chapter 20 now. Claire returned home to find Ethan on her living room floor, covered in toy blocks, with Emma and Noah climbing over him. Mama, Emma shouted, running to her on wobbly legs. Claire scooped her up, buried her face in her daughter's hair. Noah followed, demanding his own hug. How did it go? Paige asked. He was denied parole, as expected. How do you feel? Claire considered the question. How did she feel? Not happy, not sad, just at peace. Free, babe, she said finally. I feel free. Well, that night, after Paige left and Ethan said goodbye, Claire sat with Emma and Noah on the couch. They were both drowsy, fighting sleep. Mama has got you, she whispered. You are safe. You are loved. You are going to grow up knowing you are strong, because you survived the impossible. Both of you. Emma's eyes closed. Noah yawned. Claire held them close. These two miracles who should not exist. They had been born in hell and survived. They would grow up knowing their story, knowing their strength, knowing they could survive anything. Because if Claire Hoffman had learned anything from the freezer, it was this: monsters do not win. Survivors do. Marcus had tried to write her ending, tried to make her story end in a frozen vault with 3 dead bodies. Instead, Claire had taken the pen back. She had written her own ending, and it was beautiful. She looked around her townhouse, toys scattered across the floor, pictures on the walls, a life full of love and chaos and joy. A life that was entirely hers. Marcus thought cold would kill her. Instead, it forged her into someone unbreakable. And that was the greatest victory of all.